One of the owners here will copy of books. Some of you got to get a rare sighting of my husband, Tim, the other owner, earlier this evening. We had crossing paths as he hosted an event earlier, and then I came in to host this one, so it's a fun time. We're usually ships passing in the night.
Steve in there. Steve, thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's such an awesome way to honor Tom, and really honors that you asked me to be a part of it. It's really no stretch to say that meeting Tom changed the course of my life, and a large part of that is the community as well, the Spanbauerians, I guess now we're calling it. Did Steve coin that? Is that a Steve? Yeah, so sounds like you coined that, Steve. So the Spanbauerians. So it's so nice to see all of you here. Some of whom I haven't seen in a long time. Okay, so at Tom's in the basement, the thing was always, I think it was kind of an unspoken thing, but it was 7 pages. That was the max. And so when Tom would go around before, I'd say, how many pages do you have? Sometimes someone would say 10, and everyone would go, whoa! But what they really meant was, come on. So in keeping with that, I have 6.5 even. So I just want to thank you in advance for the 10 to 15 minutes that you're willing to give me here. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The first day I showed up at Tom Spanbauer's house, knowing nothing but that I'd be sitting in a basement for 5 hours with a group of people calling themselves, a bit ominously, the Dangerous Writers. I brought 7 double-spaced pages about a kid hiking in the woods with his deteriorating father. The climax of these pages comes as father and son reach the top of a waterfall, and the kid starts noticing that if he focuses on a specific spot in the flow of water approaching the falls, something odd happens. As that focused-on spot leaps off in a rush and plummets, everything seems to slow down and go quiet. If he keeps his focus, he can save the moment. If not, it just blurs by in a flash and crashes against the rocks. What the hell did it mean? I thought I did this. The centerpiece of Tom's basement was a tapestry-covered table with room for a dozen chairs. What caught one's eye first, though, was likely the print directly behind Tom's head of the table seat, featuring a double-barreled shotgun surrounded by the words, "Hemingway was a writer." If not, it was probably the polished pewter cock and balls bottle opener taking center stage on the table, the girth of which, to say the least, caused this young Irishman to pause. After some intros, a handsome middle-aged guy named Stephen pulled me aside. His hair was gray on the sides, but not on top, like the dastardly antagonists of an All My Children plot. He told me, listen, we break halfway through. Tom doesn't know it, but we're dragging him back to my house for a little party to celebrate his new book. This was Shy Munters. You should join. My initial thought was, it's a trap. He's Erica's father's evil twin. But I said, thanks. Yeah, maybe. It was nice of him to invite me, but I didn't see myself going. I'd just take this experience one step at a time. Keep it in front of me where I could understand it. The next 2 hours in Tom's basement were surreal. Listening to all those writers putting themselves on the line, reading their pages aloud, throwing their insides on the table for everyone to pick apart. I followed along and tried to imagine reading my own words in front of all those people, in front of Tom Spanbauer. It was everything I wanted to do, but feared I never would. Break came and a wig and a tiara was placed atop Tom. There were songs and laughter and weirdness, and I was feeling more and more at home. Soon, everyone left the basement and started heading to Stevens. I walked out with the group, said thanks, and kept going up the street to call my girlfriend Kate from a payphone. I didn't need to be a tattle, right? I did my toes in the water of this thing, and we'd take it from there. I already had enough to report. I'd been in Tom Spanbauer's basement. He was going to read my writing. I was coming back next week. Kate picked up on the first ring, and I said, hey. She said, well. I told her about the basement and Tom and the tiara, about the amazing group of people and the damn good writing, downplaying my excitement as usual. Like if I got too earnestly invested in anything, I'd be admitting I was putting myself forward, risking something, and therefore setting myself up for disappointment. But when I mentioned the party, Kate said, what are you, nuts? Gotta go. My whole life has been populated by nothing but hugely supportive people. Sometimes I fantasize about having loved ones who do nothing but scorn and belittle me. Their stifling of my creative dreams, igniting in me an unsmotherable flame that powers me to become the brilliant artist I always sensed was my destiny. But no, it's been my lot to suffer friends and family who have supported everything I've ever done, encouraged me, told me I could do anything I put my mind to. It's not a path I'd recommend to everyone. I hammed and hawed with Kate, rationalizing why I shouldn't go to the party. Fear is so rational, that's the thing. Creativity, spontaneity, even joy, they're all so devoid of logic. But fear, it's like a lawyer, a salesman, presents its case in terms that flatter your basest instincts. And pretty soon, you're buying. Luck isn't logical either. As I was about to hang up with Kate, a woman from the group walked by and saw me. She didn't ask, "Are you going?" or even, "Do you want to go?" She just said, "Need a ride?" Yeah, I said, "I guess I do." On the way there, we talked about her. Jane was her name, married, kids, drove all the way from Corvallis every Saturday to spend 5 hours in Tom's basement. With each word she said, I felt luckier and luckier to be a part of it. And the luckier I felt, the more nervous I got. The old familiar paradox I kept kicking out the house was again pressing its shriveled little face against the pane. If I went after everything I wanted to do, or feared I never would, the trying might drown me. But if I did nothing, it simply rot away. Stephen's house was in a tree-lined neighborhood of stately old colonials, a neighborhood with some serious lawn maintenance, a neighborhood that occurred to me with a wave of gut-hollowing anxiety that had little potential. If you'll allow me here just a brief interjection regarding my relationship with pools. Of all the world's water, none is more frightening than pools, especially pools with many people present. Still fresh is the trauma of being dragged to the Olympic-sized urine troughs of my youth, only to be confronted in dungeony concrete bathrooms by the saggy ball bags of decaying men and the ensuing horror that gravity would someday work its curse on me. How many summer afternoons did I vow to start standing on my head? Poolside, the smell of fried things was sure to be wafting, stirring up a sick potpourri with pea, chlorine, and Hawaiian tropic, with way too many people vying for a chance at wetness. There were a number of elaborate plans I was forced to come up with to avoid the potential hazards of pools if ever I did find myself forced through familial obligation to be in the presence of one. The scheme I used most often was actually just to go right on in. Yep, can't wait to take a dip. Look at Joe, everyone, who just loves to swim. I'd hop in the shallow end, wade to chest level, and doggy paddle around with an expression I hope conveyed, what could be better than this? The whole routine was 2 minutes tops and expressly built to eliminate the prospect of diving boards and slides. Diving boards or slides were to be avoided at all costs. There was nothing more frightening than diving boards or slides. The potential for drowning or worse, watered in the nose, was far too great. That burned when the bitter human stew moved from nostrils to throat. Nope. I'd be in, I'd be out, and then no one could say, don't you like swimming? No one could say, look how much fun everyone else is having. No one would know I was afraid. Back inside Stephen's place, there were 2-on-2 conversations, small group conversations, things in progress. And right away I heard the telltale sound, squeals of delight, splashes. And then through the sliding glass doors I saw it, in ground no less. Jane said something about preparing a dip and left my side. I kept moving through the house, looking for Stephen, looking for Tom. Turns out I didn't have to look far. There he was, the man of the hour himself, bouncing on the diving board. It was my first glimpse that this wasn't going to be just Chardonnay and no, your writing is so good. Because when I say Tom was bouncing on the diving board, I mean Tom was bouncing on the diving board. Bollocky bare ass to the world. He was. Need a drink? Someone called. New guy, grab a beer. Tom splashed into the deep end. I headed to the cooler. There were a handful of people in the pool, mostly men, all naked. My first sip of beer was half the can. Chlorine clung heavy in the air. Don't be an idiot, I kept muttering to myself. This is great. This is perfect. Kate's voice in my head. What are you nuts? Have fun, you jackass. The first beer went down in a few gulps. It was my sincere intention. that the second became much the same. But someone had sidled up for the small talk, and I was caught with a cheap, bulging mouthful. This was about when I decided to pace myself. After all, I was just feet from the edge of a pool here. It seemed only a matter of time until someone came up with the bright idea of throwing in the new guy. And now there was a teenager in the pool. He had trunks on, God bless him. Did he live here? Was he someone's kid? He was climbing out of the water and walking over to the shed. It was about 5 feet from the pool, a wooden structure maybe 10 feet high with a flat fiberglass roof. There was a ladder leaning against the side. The skinny teen climbed up and got on top of the shed, and no one made a move to stop him. In fact, they loved it. The kid didn't seem to think about things at all. He just took 2 steps forward and leapt right off the roof into the air. A splash, a cheer. I worked my second Pillsbury. And a few people came up and talked to me, and I chatted nervously. Next time I looked up, it was Tom on the roof of the shed. Still naked, dripping wet, hair slicked back, wiping water from his mustache. 2 steps forward, and he leapt right off the roof into the air. A splash, a cheer. I don't know what it was. It could have been the beers, the chlorine, the nerves. It could have been that Tom was 55 years old, had AIDS, and looked a little like my father. It could have been the fact that a man had just strolled by in a prom dress, and the afternoon seemed to be turning into a John Waters flick. But watching Tom leap from that roof in that moment, it was somehow the most heroic thing I have ever seen. A woman named Joanna was the one handing out the prom dresses. They were shiny and goofy. She wore a sparkly pink number and a mischievous grin, pulling dress after dress from a large cardboard box. I spotted Tom in a baby blue gown with spaghetti straps. A man who looked very much like George Costanza was in a strapless red number. 80s pop was now blaring from a speaker somewhere. How many dresses could that box possibly hold? Joanna kept pulling them out, looking for the next taker. I tried to blend in with my beer and looked around for the teen, thinking maybe he was a better target. He was already in purple. New guy, someone said. Yeah, new guy, everyone echoed. Hell, why not? My sister used to doll me up in her dresses and parade me around to the Bee Gees more than a woman. That was kind of fun. Although she also used to tie a jump rope around my neck and lead me through the backyard while I barked and growled. I decided right then, as I took off my shirt and stepped into my prom dress, that if that kind of thing was on the menu, I'd offer a polite but firm thank you no. My dress had a scoop neck that showed off my chest hair and was the shiny green shade of a fly that fancies dog poop. I grabbed another beer and talked baseball with Costanza. Socks might look good now, he said, adjusting the fit of his strapless, but wait till September. The whole party was outside at this point, milling around the edge of the pool. Someone handed me a joint. Right then, Stephen started dancing himself through the crowd, cradling a blow-up doll with an open red mouth that could have accommodated my beer can. He wore a shiny blue knee-length dress, extra poofy at the shoulders, his hairy legs sticking out the bottom. In his other hand was a toy sword with which he playfully fended off attackers, defending his plastic princess. I decided to forego the joint and passed it to Costanza. After a while, everyone moved to the patio. A chair was placed in the center of us all, and Tom was made to sit. I stood in back with Stephen and Costanza, the pool right there, a few feet behind us. And then, one by one, people took up a copy of one of Tom's 3 books and read a short excerpt, a passage that meant something to them. They'd say why it affected them so, say what those particular words penned by Tom meant to them. Why after they came upon those words, they were a little different, or a lot different. They read Tom's own words to Tom as a thank you, as a tribute. Eventually, Joanna curtsied out her prom dress and sat right down on the cement in front of Tom's chair. She opened her copy of The Mint, fell in love with the moon, and started to read. And something in me was beginning to come loose, a liquid, as if a block that was solid for so long was finally starting to melt. Joanna read, and there was wet in her eyes. Tom listened, and there was wet in his too. One baby blue spaghetti strap was falling off his shoulder. He hitched and hitched at his mustache. And that's when it started, for me. I didn't burst into tears or anything. that just sort of started leaking. Joanna finished reading, and there was a stillness. It was done, the thing. But no one quite knew how to put a bow. That's when I found myself turning around and facing the pool. Me in like blue fly progress. Apparently done with caution and logic. I closed my eyes, smoothed my skirts, and before any rational thoughts could creep in, I took 2 steps forward and leapt into the air. And just like that, I was underwater. I let myself sink all the way down, and with my feet at the bottom, I opened my eyes and looked to the surface. Waving figures in bright colors stood above and peered down to the pool. All I could hear was the faintest din, but I could tell they were cheering up there. I closed my eyes and stayed underwater for as long as I could. Then I kicked off the bottom and shot toward the surface. Thanks.
To be with so many old friends, new friends, and to think about Tom, and Steve, we're thinking about you. So my genre is weird little stories. I'm going to read 2 weird little stories and then 1 even shorter weird story. I would like to say that these aren't fiction for those in the room that I know well. But Tom used to say that fiction is the lie that tells the truth truer. Did I get that right? Yes. Yeah, so of course there's always something true in our fiction. This one is called The Ones Who Stay. I met Herd in yoga class. I liked his half pigeon. I liked that his feet were plain. I saw inside his shorts one time when he was a happy baby. He wasn't wearing underwear, and I spent the rest of the class imagining sex with him. Him and Dolphin, me and Happy Baby, me Downward Dog, him Mountain. This gentle, long-haired man with clean feet, his moves so gentle, barely making a sound as he swept into his upward-facing dog. This gentle, free-balling man was my answer, my way past the past. After class, he went up to ask the instructor how he could improve his bridge, or him and bridge, me and Downward Dog. And I unrolled and re-rolled my mat so I could walk out the door with him. When he told me his name was Herd, I didn't say Herb. I think that's why he asked me to coffee. On our first date, Herd told me that his parents named him after the buffaloes they saw on their honeymoon in the canyons of Montana. Buffalo was on their list of names too, and bull. But Herd was not a bull, would never be a buffalo. Straight out of the womb, and his parents already knew, sensed somehow, that Herd was a bird. That he would one day dumbly follow others off a cliff. That he would one day find a cliff in me. 2 months after we met, we were living together. 3 months after that, we still hadn't gone past missionary position. Now, every day, Herd follows me around the house. Herd follows me into the kitchen. Herd follows me into the yard, into the corner of the yard, or ask him if he will please go away, just go away. He kisses my cheek and goes to clip a nearby hedge. Herd drives a Prius because that's what the environmentally responsible with adequate disposable income do. There are 3 other not Priuses, Herd informed me, on our block. In the morning, the migrate downtown to work, unless the weather is nice. Then the all load their iPads and greenware sandwich containers into their locally made saddlebags and ride their bikes. Whenever we drive my Camry, Herd tells me that I could probably trade it in for a more fuel-efficient car like a Camry hybrid. He says he'd be happy to take me to the lot. He could help me make the trade. He'd be happy to do some research for me. He'd be happy to walk around the lots with me. We can grab coffee first, he says. We can bring sandwiches, picnic in the park. I tell her no thank you. I tell him I enjoy burning fossil fuel, that it gives me a warm feeling inside. Herd thinks I'm being cute. I'm not being cute. I'm being angry. I have things to yell that can never be yelled at a Herd. And Herd, I will never find the man who drove me home from night class. Herd's arms are not arms that pin women against car doors, and so I will never get to scream with a rabid fury. I will never get to bite off his earlobe, spit him away, shift my weight just enough to knee in his balls. I have practiced it 1,000 times in my mind. I know I can do it. Looks like someone had a rough day, Kurt says. One of those days when my organs are boiling in a hot broth of bitter acid. When his fingers move to do that thing on my neck that I hate, that I love, they do it. I finally boil over, releasing a hot shitstream of profanity onto Kurt's unsuspecting rosy cheeks. Cheeks fresh from shoveling the snow that I did not want shoveled. Snow that I needed to close me in, but there it was, shoveled away, leaving a neat path straight up to me. First I screamed, a pure, wordless scream that immediately drops her to my ankles, thinking, I guess, that I sprained one of them, or maybe that I stepped on a nail. He is stunned when I ask him to move out. He thinks it's just a knot in my neck. Eventually, though, he does finally leave. Like every other good man before him. It's all the same though, good men, bad men. One puts the hurt in you, the other holds it down. Steve Arndt, this one's from you. It's about 20 years old, blowing off the dust. This one's called In the Jetway. Right now, I could lick that bald man's neck. I could just stick out my tongue and lick that man's neck and no one could stop me. A person could just lick another person's neck. The bald man would probably jump a little. That's probably what he'd do. He'd probably whip around and look at me. And I'll say, yes, I licked you. It was me. Because it would be a difficult thing to deny. The bald man will pick up his bags and stand sideways, his neck out of tongue's reach. That's pretty fucked up, he'll say. All of the people in line will nod and wonder what I'll do next. Will I lick them now? They'll have that nervous look my husband Alan gets around dogs. No dogs, no kids. We were barely dating when he said it. The line starts to move again, and I wonder which of the bodies rocking back and forth have dogs at home. She does. He doesn't. For sure they do. The entire line seems to be rocking in unison now, only me out of sync. Me and an elderly woman, 4 passengers ahead. She's out of sync too. It's just me and the elderly woman against the world. Her dress is a field of bluebells and love bluebells. And the nylon she has on have turned her ankles to russet potatoes, dry and brown, odd and lumpy. But her arms are the powdery white of biscuit dough. I'm sure they would feel that way too, yielding and warm. Right now I could walk up there and squeeze that old woman's arms. I could squeeze her arms. I could tickle her in the pug folds of her neck. I could pick that old woman up and spin her around and around until her little shoes fly off. When I set her back down, laughter will spray from the black gap where she's missing a few teeth up top, and her face will make me think of that Italian peasant who sells almonds in the travel brochure. Someday I'll go to Italy and buy that person's almonds. It will take her a moment to catch her breath in my powdered biscuit, but when she does, she will clap her hands together and say, oh my, I haven't laughed like that in 40 years. The two of us will laugh again when we look at our seating assignments. The elderly woman I choose to tickle happens to be in 21B, and I'm in 21C. I put her bag, the kind that looks like a couch cushion, green with pink peonies, into the overhead and help her get settled into her seat. She tells me she's from Georgia. I tell her I'm from Oregon, but I always felt like I should have been from Georgia, or at least Virginia. Somewhere where the women drink mint juleps and the men crop celery. I was born wrong, I say. And that's not the way I meant to say it, but still, she looks soft at me, she pats my hand. We talk through clouds, over birds and blurry fields, talk as we hop Crater Lake. Mount Bachelor is a stone. Time is a small thing too. Already the pilot is telling us to prepare for landing by moving our seats into the upright position. I push my old woman's button for her and get a pen out of my purse so we can exchange addresses. And then, sorry. You must write to me, she says, and I promise I will. Years go by and she has pictures of me on her refrigerator. On my refrigerator is a square-headed boy bent over a creek and a girl licking the last blue juice from her popsicle stick. And there's a man, curls on their way to white, her son. The sides of my shoebox bolt with her letters, and I have to use a rubber band to get the lid to stay on. Sometimes there are newspaper clippings tucked in with the letters, inspirational quotes cut from greeting cards, that sort of thing. Some of them have God in them, but I don't mind. I kind of like it. It's God we share. Then one year, just when I'm about to start a new shoebox, no new letters come. Weeks go by without a single letter. Her son calls with the news, how she spoke of me, how she went on, he says, like a daughter, he says. Did you ever get a puppy? He wants to know before we hang out. 2 days later, I stand in a hot jetway behind a bald man, but I don't want to lick him because it was just that one day. But on the chance, I lean out from the line to see if she's standing before passengers up. In Georgia, I take a taxi to the cemetery where I see them huddled together, people shaped like her, short-limbed and droopy-shouldered, sad marsupials in their funeral vest. I don't know any of them, but when I hug their pressed dresses and scratchy suits, it seems like we've done this before. After a ceremony that makes our insides ache, we all go over to the daughter's house. Under a pale pink tulip tree, we drink mint juleps and talk about what a delightful laugh she had. Delightful, to use my favorite word. I tell them about the time I tickled her in the neck, and the hairs on my arm spring up when it's her laugh that comes out of them. This burrito. Right now I could lick every one of you, I say, and that isn't what I meant to say, not lick. But still, they pat my cheeks, they smile at me. It seems like they might even love me. On both sides and not numbering the pages. I was thinking ahead and I can be able to find it. So I have just one little tiny one, and I guess, yeah, this is, I think it speaks to the moment right now, and I hope it ends on enough of a little bit of hope. Maybe I tend to write a little dark. This one is called After the End. The bakery was the last building standing, and so everyone gathered around its 2.5 walls, its one miraculous window. They took turns walking up to what was left of the counter, ordering biscuits and scones from the unblinking baker, now floured in ash. One light of bread he could trace up his apron to a flap of skin hanging from his chin. The biscuits and scones had been reduced to black pebbles, and nobody seemed sure what to do with them, why they wanted them. Some licked, others with nothing left to carry cupped them like eggs, like answers. The children were the most inventive, building palaces around the pebbles, summoning 6-horned beasts to guard them. The pebbles were magic, they said. Yes, if you plant them, new buildings will grow. You'll see, Papa, we'll have a city again. The older siblings told them to shut the fuck up, but their parents, bent with the weight of their grief, could not make words, could barely make nods. Only the elderly helped in the sewing, twisting their bent fingers into the earth to make the holes, covering with soot the seeds planted by the children, watering each new planting with wet spit they could coax from their tongues. They made their way along the road, sowing a pebble where yesterday they bought milk, a pebble where Sundays they would sit the long, dull hours of Mass, a reluctant pebble for the doctor's office, an extra pebble for the toy shop, and on they went into the red lighted evening, until the mothers and fathers could bear no longer the sight of their foolish home and rose like cinder block to their works.
Writings, very tiny bit. Can you hear me okay? This is from, I think this is the opening of his novel called Most Stars. Storms where I live come in fast, ride south winds right off the Pacific. Long fir boughs sling fat drops against my bedroom window. Far across town, there is a hilltop radio tower that blinks red. When I wake up in the middle of the night, my room quiet, only the wind outside, I lift my head off my pillow and look out through the dark distance at those red blinks, and before I settle back, I whisper, "Hey."
please cling to the microphone. Okay. Oh, I forgot the part where I have to be up here and listen to people. Okay. Slow down. Okay. So I met Steve Arndt at a dangerous writing introduction workshop, February 2002. I was kind of, Tom Spanbauer was leading it. He read the story, Sea Animals, which I can't remember a word of, except I remember the whole time thinking, holy shit, this is amazing. Stephen already joined Rose. I sat at the Pinewood table. They were also teachers there. But during the breaks during this workshop, I would kind of be in the corner trembling, which is kind of like my power move to get people to feel sorry for me. And I became friends with Steve Arndt and Kate Gray, who were both in that workshop. Yeah, and it was a fabulous time. And Steve, is this right, Steve? You were a stockbroker. Stockbroker, yeah. I'm so used to just talking about the literary stuff. But so we were learning how this dangerous writing thing worked, and we were like spilling our guts on the page. But we would meet Kate, Steve, and I in Steve's like stockbroker office in some building downtown Portland, and it was just a funny thing to be like so fragile and trying to get to the heart of what we're trying to say. And we're in a stockbroker office. So anyway, when I visited Steve earlier this week, we just reminisced about those times. Okay, so I don't know if this is a dangerous writing thing or just a me thing, but usually when I write stuff, like I don't know what I'm doing for a little bit. Like I've got like a steaming pile of something. And it takes me some rounds to figure that out. And so unfortunately, y'all are going to be a part of me figuring this out. I'm going to read a few pages. So maybe a little backstory is that I handed off a novel I've been on and off working on for 20 years to my agent a little while ago. Thank you, Susie, for helping me last year on it. That was I appreciate all their brilliance. She helped me. I was a drafter. But anyway, and my parents are kind of not feeling sick, and I've been just questioning writing. Do I want to write? Am I a writer still? Do I want to quit this thing? And typical for a writer to write about not writing through writing, and so that's part of what this is. Okay, is that enough throat clearing? Or no? Jackie, Cecily, my writing group, thank you for helping me ramble through this earlier in the week. Oh, and Sherry Blue, I met Sherry Blue at the Pinewood table, and now she's my wife, and we have a 16-year-old kid right here. Okay, that's enough throat clearing. I started. I have, luckily I don't have too many pages because I suspect that I might ramble. I thought I'd be lost without the writing, that I'd hate myself if I quit. But it feels good to let go of this chore. Baggage that I've been carrying for more than 30 years. Trying to write, the guilt about not writing, the ache to put something down on the page, to tell you about my messy relationship with whoever, and then try to publish it, and of course the ache of rejection, and the even worse, weirder ache of acceptance. The ache to make a connection with you, with anyone, make you feel something, anything. I'm so desperate for this. But recently that desperation has stopped, or slowed down, or changed. I don't feel guilty about going for a long walk, or how I'm crocheting this cute little fox that takes forever. It's all okay because I'm not required to go back to the page and finish the story. I don't even need to finish crocheting this dumb fox that doesn't even have a nose yet. It used to be that I felt like I would die if I didn't get your approval, waiting for that nod, for your eyebrows to rest in satisfaction, and acknowledgement at the end of the story. I was holding my breath for the relief to see your relief when the story landed in the right spot. But now I don't need that acknowledgement. I'm not worried about landing a plane, and it's amazing. It's also kind of awful. Even though I don't miss the writing, I kind of miss that need, that tenacious drive for acceptance. It gave me direction, gave me a clear purpose. I didn't have to wake up each day having to revisit the question of what's the point of it all. In those days when I looked for acceptance, I would have told you all the details of how my dad is dying. He's been dying for years. I guess everyone who is alive is dying. But with him, it's getting extra fierce. This grumpy 96-year-old man. The narcissism and the monologuing and the distrust, it turned almost comic with the dementia. But an innocent sweetness lingers there too. Some raw love wiggles out. And I'm almost angry to be affected by these blips of sweetness and love. There's also the fragility, the fragility of a man who can barely make it to the bathroom with his walker. Every hour, I'm waiting for that call. I used to think that call would be my mom telling me that he's dead, but now I know the call is much more complicated than that. He's not dead. He fell, and maybe he broke his hip, but maybe not. And it's not clear if it's shit or blood or mud. And maybe we call 911, or maybe it's okay. Just come over and we'll figure it out. Dead and dying are wildly different things. Once upon a time, I would have been compelled to write all about him in a neatly choreographed story. I would write a story with a thoughtful arc. I would perfectly pace the progress of the protagonist. I would be so driven to tell the story. Now I don't really want to tell you a neat story. I might choose to bury the ache of it, and then go to crochet this clumsy box that isn't going to get published or announced anywhere for anybody to accept or reject. One of the things I love about crocheting is that if you screw up, you can just pull on the thread and restart from the beginning. I almost like the feeling of the pop of undoing each stitch even more than creating the thing in the first place. It really is so satisfying. My granny squares just take forever. When I was a younger writer, I had a bunch of spreadsheets. This was before there was an app or a site for everything, but I had a spreadsheet for everything. My favorite spreadsheet was about my short stories. It was a list of every short story I wrote, every short story I was writing, every short story I was thinking of writing. The ones in progress would have info about like what was left to do, and the finished ones, I'd include a list of publications where I was planning to send them. Write, publish. Nothing about dying fits nicely in a spreadsheet. I wanted my mom to have some years without carrying the burden of what my father has become. How many more doctors and diapers until we get to the end? My father never liked my writing. He said things like, why do you have to tell people all that stuff about yourself? But I love telling the world about every one of my weaknesses and flaws. It makes me feel strong, or at least stronger. But now that he's incapable of disapproving or approving occasionally of me, I'm also less attached to whether you approve or disapprove of me. And without this fear of disapproval, my drive to write, or maybe just at least publish, has faded. Does that count as irony? I really don't know, actually. You'll have to tell me. I always forget how irony. Anyway, okay, I'm supposed to just read what's on the page. This is I guess I'm a little disappointed in myself for writing about novelty. Using one of the oldest cliches in the book when I told myself that I wouldn't open the book at all. Where does that leave me? Where does that leave us? What kind of new broken relationship is this? Am I building something new or only destroying something old? If it's any consolation, I promise that I'm not going to wrap things up in a little bow like I once tried to do with my writing. I won't try to clean up all these confusing tense shifts. There are a lot of this story. And half-hearted metaphors like that airplane metaphor that never really went anywhere, and the run-on sentences that wander off the page without knowing how to get back home. My dying dad is still linger there, fallen in the bathroom. I won't race over to help him when I get the call from my mom. I'll sit in the car for the 5 minutes and 7 seconds it takes to watch an old Saturday Night Live sketch on my phone. The one where Dan Aykroyd as Jimmy Carter is on a call-in show, and he's helping talk a guy down who was on the line tripping on acid. I know that sketch. You really should look at that too. I watched Dan Aykroyd / Jimmy Carter say, "Just remember, you're a living organism on this planet." And then I put my phone away. I take some deep breaths, and I try to remember the me who was right here, right now, no matter all the noise and pain around me. And then I entered the building where they now live to see where things stand. Where my father isn't actually standing at all, but he's stuck next to the toilet. And when I lift him up, he'll vomit all over me, and then not remember this moment a moment later. But that night, after cleaning him up and getting him to bed, in a unique moment of grace, he tells me and my mother, "I just want you to know that I'm not in any pain right now." It's a beautiful moment, and I think to myself, die. Tonight is the night. It is a mic drop moment for a perfect death, even if a little too graceful for our family. But it doesn't go that way. The next day, he'll get up and he'll still claim that the cleaners are stealing his gin, and that my mom is fucking whoever she's supposedly fucking whoever, and that I'm stealing his money, and that kids today don't know shit about shit. And in the middle of all this messiness, there's still the sweetness and the joy from us watching two mischievous birds, sparrows, I think, outside the window, either playing or flirting or just flying around in the wind. He'll say, "I've never seen anything like that." He'll say this every time it happens. There isn't going to be more. There isn't going to be closure. I don't intend to resolve a complicated relationship with my father or whoever. I'll be fine without the pretend. You'll go about your day. I'll go about my day. Maybe we'll bump into each other at some dorky crochet group, at that cafe with all the ants scrambling along the windowsill. That cafe full of people with BO. It's not this cafe, just so you know. It's a totally different cafe. That cafe full of people with BO. And both of us will do some weird eyebrow thing that will have an echo to something familiar, but we won't know from what. And then we'll get back to that increased stitch or decreased stitch or whatever it's called. And maybe you can help me with this awkward fox nose that still looks weird. I don't need it to look just right. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't even need to be good, but I still want it to look like a recognizable thing.
And I'm a teacher. You're supposed to say hi, Kirk.
Hi, Kirk.
Hi, Kirk. And I'm married to Susie.
Yeah, okay.
And for the last, how many years? 18 years?
Something like that.
Something like that. I've been her +1 at these. And it's awkward when you're not a writer. I'm a teacher. And I'm a storyteller, but I'm not a writer. So I never get to stand up in front of other writers and all that. But listening to everyone, I remembered a story about Steve. The first time I met him, we were at an event that Tom was reading at Thomas Lauderdale's place down on 2nd Avenue. So it was a big deal. So Susie takes me and she's explaining to me why this is a big deal. And I don't know anything about it. I'm just +1. So we go down and I don't know anybody there. And Susie is flitting around and she knows everybody and she gets hugs from everybody. And I'm trying to find a wall to lean on against. And then Steve comes in and he looks like he's been in a hurricane. His hair's all blasted back and his eyes are about this big and everything. And he comes right up to me and he goes, "You'll never guess what happened." And I go, "Hi, I'm Kirk. I'm with Susie." "Oh, yeah, I know who you are. I've seen you around." "Okay, what happened?" He said, "Well, I couldn't find this place. And so I'm walking down 2nd Avenue and there's a group of people in front of this building. And I was pretty sure it was where the event was. And people were lined up and they were going in. So he said, I kind of wiggled my way in there. People were super friendly. And this woman came up and patted his hand and said, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you. Why don't you come with me?" And you come into the middle part and there was a little bar set up and people were big smiles and he didn't recognize anybody. He thought he was going to recognize somebody. And then he said another woman comes up and grabbed his arm and took him into a little room in the back, and there was curtains up, and there was a bed. And he was really confused. And he said, I don't know what's going on here. And she said, you're not here for the swingers club? So every time I would go to an event and Steve was there, I'd go, how's it swinging?
I started a writing group in Moldova Village at Annie Lynn's Books. And this guy named Steve kept coming, and he kept telling us about, well, in dangerous writing, we talk about blah, 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 blah. And after a while, he invited me. And he knew probably, I mean, I don't know if he knew how anxious I was at the time, but he knew to get me to dangerous writing that he needed to escort me and bring me there. So I went to Tom's basement one time, and it was because Steve Arndt took me there. And then he also took me to the Pinewood table. And I ended up studying at the Pinewood table with Jackie and Cecily and Yuvi and I don't think Susie and I ever were there at the same time. But anyway, a lot of amazing people who are Tom adjacent. And through Steve, I also ended up in the Henry's writing group with a lot of people also in this room. So thank you, Steve. I found my community in Portland because of him, and he always has shared the community he has. He's always multiplying it by sharing with everyone around him. So it turns out I have a new novel coming out. In November from Hooligan Press, and I'm going to read 2 short chapters from it tonight. I have never read it anywhere, so I'm a little anxious about it. You need to know this is set in New Jersey in the front story set in the 1920s. This is part of the backstory, and my protagonist Violet is a child in these pieces. Her mom is Jean, and her dad George is he makes applejack and cider, and it's not prohibition yet, so it's not illegal, but that's coming, so. Between her 6th and 7th birthdays, Violet spied an illustration of a giraffe in a Saturday Evening Post, or maybe it was Collier's. She imagined herself as spots and a flinging sort of horse-like gait. She had the height and the long neck. Why not be a giraffe? She began licking her flanks, or rather her forearms, as her tongue could not reach so far as the creature in the picture. Unfortunately, the clean, frocked girls in the neighborhood wanted nothing to do with a giraffe, especially when Violet began grazing on tree leaves, jutting her chin as high as she could to bite off a mouthful. The only trees she could reach from the ground didn't qualify as trees, they were shrubbery. She found them pleasingly bitter. Grass she despised. Once, before she had found her taste for trees, she grazed a bit too zealously in the across-the-street neighbor's yard, and a piece of grass had gotten caught in her long throat. Drinking fluids did not budge it, neither did crying or screaming or singing. Violet's mother made an appointment with a doctor with a laugh and a shrug. The doctor said she had to wait for the vegetation to decompose in her gullet. The girl burnt the color green until it was gone. The neighborhood boys were impressed. They invited Violet to play once she recovered. A giraffe was an interesting addition to detective games, for it made a better victim for swordplay and gunfights than any animal they had imagined to kill without her. Violet had never felt so appreciated. The boys traveled together, a tumble of brothers and friends. When everyone joined, they numbered 12. Violet made 13. She pranced and paraded and stuck her neck out as far as she could. At the boys' behest, she spied on Mrs. Cranston, who wore dresses with breeches underneath and had an embroidered wheel on the sleeve of her best jacket, just like her mother, suspicious. Mrs. Cranston always came to the church basement, even though all her children were grown, also suspicious. Violet wondered, but never asked, but because usually adults gave boring answers. Sometimes Giraffe Violet climbed trees to middle leagues, and for the pleasure of pretending to fall, and Ralph McIntyre put his fist against his eye, sighted down the line, and shot. Every day, one boy or another would race up the slate steps to Violet's front door and bang with fists until she came out. On the days she had piano lessons, a lot of them waited at her doorstep until she could get away. Violet would rather gallop around in a circle or scramble down the banks of the glen than stay locked inside with the girls who liked dolls. Some of the dolls didn't even have mouths. Violet's giraffitude and the boys' resulting admiration lasted until the matter of the geraniums. One innocuous afternoon in the spring of 1902, Violet ruined everything, even though she didn't mean to. The boys had created a giraffe corral, linking their hands to keep her contained. But the game did not satisfy any of them, at least of all Violet, because Ralph and his older brothers were on vacation, which meant there weren't enough boys to make a big enough circle to give Violet sufficient exercise. "Let's see who can piss the farthest," suggested Jim Gordon. "Not in my house," said Ricky Pickett, whose yard the gang was currently occupying. His mother put claps over the heads of the misbehaving boys and struck them metal with a spoon, causing legendary headaches and occasional hearing damage. Everyone agreed not at Ricky's house. Jim volunteered. He lived on the corner of Baldwin and Clifton. Violet imagined the day would bring her greatest triumph yet. As a girl, she often bested the boys in these types of ill-thought contests. She had more flexibility, more guts, and better balance than most of them, and only lost regularly in the running games. Pissing had nothing to do with running. In fact, it seemed ill-advised to do both at once. "Golly, this will be fun," Violet said aloud. Ricky smirked and adjusted his shoulder bag. "You aren't going to win." "I bet I'll do," Violet retorted. "I bet you don't," Ricky said. Violet led the way to Jim's backyard, craning her neck toward the destination, an elegant neck caught in a buttoned-up blouse. Nobody thought far enough ahead to disinvite her. Mostly because they didn't really think she'd pull down her bloomers. The boys and Violet lined up in the backyard. After some discussion, they decided to proceed in order from left to right. Jim went first. He sprayed as fine an arc as Violet had ever seen. "That a hose in your pants?" she asked. The boys giggled. Could it be that she didn't know? Ricky went next. His hose peeked out of his short pants like a baby bird with one eye, ugly as an elbow. Ricky concentrated, took aim, and fired a good-natured squirt. Jason went next, then Rob, and last, whose spray shot farther than the others. Violet had no choice but to try to be less. These were her best friends, her only friends. She had claimed she could win. Perhaps she could. She had never tried for distance. Violet wriggled her bloomers down to her ankles, tilted her torso back as far as she dared, and craned her neck forward in an attempt to balance. She used her hand to adjust the aim up higher than it might go otherwise. The scream she emitted flew in a triumphant arc over the lawn, landing on Mrs. Gordon's geraniums. "What?" Jameson shouted. "She cheated," Rob said. "Better than watching tennis," Ricky said admiringly. "That girl can really let her rip." "Ma," shouted Jim. "Ma, Violet watered your flowers." The next chapter is, I can't leave this one too. This is the mom who has, you'll hear the novel's called The Neighborhood Dames, and the mom has recently found out that there's a group of women in this town in New Jersey that have dug tunnels underneath the men's houses to undermine the patriarchy by like chipping away at the foundations of their houses. So I feel like it was a nice piece to read today because I need a little hope, as I think Kathleen said. So you'll hear Jean has been newly awakened to the idea that there's a whole society underground in suburban New Jersey. Jean liked taking afternoon tea in the parlor, sitting in the stiff-backed chairs that had been a present from her mother-in-law. She could eye the Radford marriage portraits and think about the world in which she wanted to raise Violet. A world that would see her daughter as equal to a husband. If she chose to marry, Jean wouldn't be like her mother insisting on a match. Eleanor hadn't married, and she seemed much happier than Jean. She took a tentative sip of her tea, still too hot. The base of the rose-printed teacup clanged against the gold-rimmed saucer. Since the women in the church basement confided in her, Jean couldn't unknow how the men controlled everything. The suffragists knew this. They worked openly to get women the vote, to pull political power back their way. The temperance women, not as stuffy a lot as you can imagine, also campaigned for domestic power, for protection at home. Liquored up men were more likely to beat their wives and children. Both of these organizations did good work. Working in parallel, they orchestrated some incremental advantages for women, but not enough. Those groups were held back by being visible to men. Editorials were written against the suffragettes by the most preeminent male scholars. Scoffing protesters lined the temperance ladies' parade routes and ripped down flyers for the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which was founded in 1874. But the dames, hidden underground, didn't have to waste time defending themselves against scurrilous attacks, against whatever the men could dream up to slow them down. The men had no idea that feminine power course beneath the city, power was slow but methodical social change. It's what made them successful, stayed secret. A few times after she had put Violet to bed for the night, Jean had tried to talk to George about some of her burgeoning observations, especially how his Applejack production contributed to violence in local families' homes. Men used drinking as an excuse for beating their wives, articles in the newspaper confirmed it, but he acted as if she were setting a temperance tract. A man should be able to imbibe at his own table, he had said. I just handle the production and distribution, and what we earn provides for you and Violet. It's not about temperance, Jean told him. Do you want your daughter growing up thinking she's worth less than a man? George stared at her as if she had begun speaking in tongues. Any product that emboldens husbands but wives at risk, she quoted from Eleanor's notes, which she hoped to turn into an official manual. Only none of the members agreed that a printed edition was worth the risk of discovery. If only Jean had known the dames before she married him, she wouldn't have gone through with it. George was kind and smart, and she supposed somewhat attractive, but she chose him because that was the only option, marry. Unless she had decided to become a nun, but then she wouldn't have had a daughter to fight for. Now she was stuck here in this fancy house for the rest of her life, listening to George prattle on about the viscosity of alcohol and annual yields, but she really wanted to be underground with Eleanor, her hip touching Eleanor's on that flimsy cot. Pleasure flared through her at the thought, and she took a long sip of tea to scald the unfamiliar want out of herself. Her tongue pulsed with pain. Jean saw it plainly now that she's been inducted to the dames. She had married into and benefited socially and financially from a man who fueled the system with alcohol. They needed her to take him down. They'd be careful with her starting excavations and tunneling. The house wouldn't ever fall and crush her or Violet. But a tilting floor, a sinking parlor hadn't done enough to distract George or keep him from his sales routes. First, they needed to finish digging out under the space under the Radford house and connect it with the other tunnels. That way the dames could come and go without detection. Then it would be up to Jean to diffuse George's power, using the tunnels, bringing other ladies in to solve the problem of him. Maybe she could convince him that he had enough money, that cider would be plenty of income from here on out. Other men can and would make alcohol. She picked up the teacup and sniffed its contents. Still too hot? A knock disrupted her consideration of its temperature. Jean sighed, stood up, and smoothed her dress. Probably a traveling salesman. Anne Gordon stood on the slate steps, holding Violet's sleeve in a firm grip. Jean was pleased to see her neighbor. She had put Anne on her recruit possibility list because of how mean her husband was. Surely Anne could use the wool pulled from her eyes to see her life through the lens of the dame's teachings. Violet struggled to get free, the look on Anne's face, angry. Her sour lips made Jean's hair frizz. So much for a recruit. Anyone offended by Violet wouldn't last long in the church basement. Violet held out her arms and let her go. Mama, she stuffed her face into Jean's leg. What happened? Jean asked Anne. Mothers needed to tell each other these things, all of them watching out for each other's children. Outdoor rules belong to all of them, just the same as indoor rules belong to each individual life. And to the fathers who stepped in, which didn't describe George. At least she had that in her marriage. She'd rather let a spider take over the corner of the bathroom than squash it. A huff from Anne, outraged. Your daughter urinated on my geraniums. Not on purpose, Violet insisted. Mrs. Gordon says I did it on purpose, but I didn't. Can you just not be mean for once? Jean asked her. Can we talk like we were part of the same community? Me? Anne Gordon gasped. Your daughter grew in my garden. The least you can do is apologize. 2 summers ago, Anne Gordon had stuffed the elegant bouquet Jean had carried home from New York into the fellowship garbage pail. Anne felt they were too ostentatious for proper worship. Everyone knew Anne's husband, a real looker, spent his weekends in the city. He had an apartment there for his floozies. Maybe Anne objected to Jean's sanctuary gift because they were New York flowers. It busted Jean's chops though to find them in the trash. She kneeled down to address her daughter. What happened, sweetheart? Violet blurted out the story of the competition, how the boys had egged her on, the hoses in their pants. Did your son participate? Jean asked Anne. The woman shrugged as if this had nothing to do with anything. If so, he is equally responsible. Jean put her hands on her hips and smiled. Or more so, because Jim is older than Violet. He should have known better. It's different, Anne said. He's a boy. It's the same, Jean said. They are children. Let them be children. Your daughter pulled down her bloomers in my yard. Did she keep her skirt on? Anne pointed at Violet. Ask her. It's not like I was watching. Jean grinned and ran her hand through her hair. Just done that morning in the parlor. If she kept her skirt on and your son exposed himself, then he is at fault, not my daughter. I should be complaining to you. Besides, if you have a crowd of children in your yard, isn't it your job to make sure they behave? Did you know the boys have hoses, Mama? Violet chimed in. Jean supposed she'd have to give Violet the correct word. Not yet, though, or to be up and down the block by tomorrow's lunch. Anne coughed. If you don't take this seriously, then I will speak to your husband. He's at work, Jean said, and I'm responsible for my daughter. Not responsible enough. With that, Anne marched away. Jean shrugged and crossed her off the recruitment list. Awful husband or not, she's not worth it.